When the young male nurse, Liam, began to sing to the old woman lying still and silent in the dim, sterile room of St. Jude's Public Hospital, he did so for no reason other than the quiet prompting of his own weary soul. He sang an old, forgotten lullaby, his voice a soft tenor that barely disturbed the air. A simple melody against the rhythmic weeping of the heart monitor. He was unaware, entirely and blissfully ignorant, that his every note, his every gentle adjustment of the thin blanket over the woman's frail form was being watched. Miles away, in a penthouse that pierced the clouds, the woman's daughter, Isabella, a titan of industry with a heart armored in grief and suspicion, watched him on a cold screen, her world of calculated transactions and hollow victories about to be shattered by an act of kindness so pure, so unrewarded, it felt like a language she had long forgotten. He sang to the mother, not knowing the daughter was listening, and in that simple, sacred act, a chain of events was set in motion that would mend fractures in souls neither knew were so deeply broken, proving that the most profound currency in this world is not the gold in a vault, but the grace in a human heart. Liam moved through the hushed corridors of the hospital's third floor like a ghost on the edge of exhaustion. His shift had started 10 hours ago, and the accumulated fatigue settled deep in his bones. A familiar ache that was both physical and something more. Something that lived in the space between his responsibilities and his dreams. The white of his uniform was crisp, but he knew the cuffs were beginning to fray. A small secret sign of the constant wear and tear, not just on the fabric, but on him. He carried the weight of his own world silently. His younger sister, Clara, whose laughter was the brightest sound he knew, was tethered to a life of expensive medications and doctor's visits, a financial burden that reshaped his every decision. He took the double shifts, the night rotations that nobody else wanted, because the extra pay was not a luxury but a lifeline. He walked past rooms where families kept vigil, their hushed conversations a murmur of hope and fear. He nodded at other nurses, their faces etched with the same controlled empathy, a shared understanding that passed without words. Then he reached room 312. The card on the door read, Alara Vance, but to the staff, she was simply the woman in 312, the patient with no visitors. For weeks she had lain there. Liam felt a strange kinship with her stillness. In a world that demanded so much from him, her silence was a kind of sanctuary. He entered the room, the soft click of the latch the only sound. The air smelled of antiseptic and lonely quiet. He began his routine, his movements practiced and gentle. He checked the IV drip, his fingers light on the tubing. He monitored the readouts on the screen, the blinking green lines that told him a life was still burning, however faintly. He fluffed her pillow and adjusted the single thin blanket. He spoke to her, his voice low and calm, telling her about the rain that had started to fall outside, a soft patter against the window pane. He did it every night, this one-sided conversation, because the thought of her lying in total silence felt like a cruelty he could not permit. As she watched the nurse speak to her mother, Isabella felt something shift. Her memories, buried deep beneath years of boardroom battles and sterile apologies, began to stir. She remembered lullabies, warm hands, the way her mother used to hum when she thought no one was listening. The next night, when Liam returned to room 312, he found something on the table beside her bed. A small note, written in elegant handwriting. Thank you for seeing her as I couldn't. It wasn't signed, but he understood. In a world addicted to noise, his quiet song reached farther than he ever imagined. And in the sterile hum of that hospital room, something sacred bloomed. Not a miracle of medicine, but of mercy. The old woman never woke up, not while Liam was around, but something had changed. Not in her, perhaps, but in the world around her, in Isabella, in Liam, in anyone who had forgotten that quiet acts of compassion still carry weight, even when no one applauds them. He would never know the empire his song touched, nor the armored heart it softened. He simply did his job, and somewhere in the silence, that was more than enough.